Hey everybody, Karen from Karen Goes Carnivore. How you doing today? So I thought I would just share like the very first meal I had when I decided to go carnivore from keto to carnivore. So I was keto for 4 weeks and then I decided I was going to take the plunge and just go into carnivore. And I wanted to share this because just sharing the experience. And again, for new folks who might be trying it, there's just little tips that you can get. And actually, I'll probably do a video on like all my favorite tips at some point for beginners, like what really helped me along, That would be a good video title. I'll do that next. But what the first meal that I had that I thought I would try, and I've had roasts many, many times, like pot roast. Okay, so pot roast was my first meal. I stuck it in the crock pot. I let it, and I'm like, oh, great. Yummy. I can have pot roast. Okay. But every time I've had pot roast in the past, I always have potatoes and carrots and onions, at least in there, tomatoes and mushrooms, probably I would put in there. Okay. And a bunch of spices. So, and then there'd be like this really rich gravy from all of that. So not just fat coming off, just not just fat, basically. So, and so that's what I was used to. So having a pot roast like that has never been a problem for me, especially like a one-off, But I have to say, like I get the pot roast done and I'm like, okay, I can eat like this all the time, Really excited about it. And I start eating it. And now I had been low carb for 4 weeks, so it's not like my body was somewhat adapted. It still had more adaptation to go through, especially to get fat adapted, because it just had, I just needed to get fat adapted. It took a week or two, first 2 weeks, and just my body was not used to having so much fat, high fat, because this is like an 80% fat, 20% protein. Okay, is basically what you're going for. And everybody needs to I think, we might talk about that in a different video. I think that's something we all had to kind of figure out on our own, what that means and how much your body needs. Because when you're eating too much fat because you'll get diarrhea. So that's a whole nother conversation. But so that happened a few times. I was like, okay. So everybody's like fat intake and when you get adapted and how much you can handle even after you're adapted, how much you want is going to be probably a little different for everybody is my guess. So you kind of have to just go through that process. But that first meal, so I had it and I was like, the First of all, I had no vegetables. So then I realized, now looking back at that, I realized that I probably ate way more of the vegetables, the roasted vegetables in the fat and the gravy. So good, right? I probably had way more vegetables than I ever did meat. And so when I tried to just have the meat, it was quite disappointing, I would say. I was quite disappointed because I was super excited about it. And yeah, so it just was, one of those things. So I am actually not that fond of pot roast anymore on its own, but it's my husband's favorite thing. Like he just wants one every day. I'm like, okay. Like I'd rather have the steak with the crispy fat on it. That is really, so everybody's going to be a little different, but I was surprised how disappointed I was in the pot roast. Because it really wasn't a traditional, right? It was just the chuck roast, basically. It was a chuck roast. That's what I cooked. Now I've been getting from my meat share, basically, from a local farmer. I've been getting like arm roasts and tip sirloin roasts, I think we got. So she's giving us different, I think there's like a butt roast in my freezer. Is there such a thing as a butt roast? I think there is. So she's been giving us different roasts and my husband likes all of them. So I'm like, okay, At first he was like just chuck roast, like just, but so I stick that in the crock pot for him and he can eat off of it all day. And then I just do something else. It's so easy, so I just wanted to share real quick my very first meal on carnivore, how it went. And even though I was disappointed, it's not an easy way to start, right? But if this is why I wanted to share it, because again, I'm only 5 weeks in right now, and my experience with what I'm eating is so different. So if you're just starting, then keep going, or if you're just renewing back into carnivore and looking for some encouragement, just, let yourself figure it out. Give yourself the time to figure it out. Understand that it's going to be a little uncomfortable for a couple weeks, but after that, once you start getting more adapted and you start, like, some things start to feel better in you. Like, I have to say, I have not mentioned this yet in any of the videos. The first thing I noticed, I'd forgotten about this. The very first thing I noticed and this is actually when I stopped eating carbs when I started on keto, I could breathe. I realized when I got rid of the inflammation, I lost like 5 pounds of water weight. I'm guessing it was like really fast. I'm sure it was just water weight. Okay. I could breathe. I could take a deep breath and not struggle to take a deep breath. I feel like I haven't been able to breathe for the longest time. And I realize, it's been 2 months. I realize for like years and years and years and years and years, how much inflammation was probably just around my lungs or in my esophagus area. So that was incredible. So when you immediately, if you start, give yourself a week, even though you might be needing to get used to the digestive stuff, or just notice if one little thing is gone. Make a whole list of all your symptoms, and trust me, you'll be like, holy crap, I have a lot of symptoms. But then you'll be able to say, oh, that's weird. This one's, going away. So, all right, I'll see you in the next video. I hope this is helpful. Give a thumbs up if it is, and subscribe. I would love it. All right, see you later. Bye-bye. Oh, before I leave though, you should tell me what your first meal was on carnivore and how did it go? I would love to know that. And other people who are going through some new experiences might, get intrigued and want to try different things that do you remember your first one? Because I know I have quite a few people here who have been on carnivore for a long time. Do you remember what your first meal was? Okay, see you later. Bye-bye.